Hey, how's it going? Today I figured it would be pretty cool if we went into Funland in my Planet Coaster 2 park, the one that I've worked on for the longest, and redid one of my favorite rides, the B&M dive coaster known as Nevermore. I constantly call it the Raven, but it's Nevermore, and this is the way it currently looks, and though it's okay, it's kind of a compact layout, and there's a lot of room to play over here, so I kind of want to get into this. Now, I am having some trouble with my back, so this was recorded over several sessions, but here we go into this, and the first thing that it just gives me so much anxiety is deciding when to pull the trigger and just delete. And there it goes. And that means the ride rebuild process has commenced. So I don't often show my coaster building on the channel because, I'll be honest with you, I don't think I'm a very good coaster builder. I am not well versed in all the different coaster types, though I absolutely love roller coasters, and I think they're amazing things, and I'm fascinated by them, and obviously there's tons of them in my park here. I maybe don't have the professional knowledge that a lot of the bigger coaster enthusiasts do, so I tend to shy away from showing my build process because it's probably very non-traditional and more game-like and not as serious. But here you can see me just kind of get into this. I wanted to have a really a layout that kind of acted in two sections. So the first section of the layout does the initial wow, you know, and it's fast, it's fun, does not lose as much of the energy. So a lot of it is the downhill portion, and it goes through its layout at speed. And I wanted this coaster to play over the pathway twice, and then once you get into Coaster Hollow itself, to again interact with the pathway and kind of go over the guest head and do this whole routine there. And I also wanted that stall to be a little more, a little more spiked than it ended up being, but I think it works well. It did kind of unfold it a bit, which is irritating to me, but you'll see me here. I kind of get settled on this idea that I want this turnaround to not be as abrupt. I want you to go into this turnaround feeling the full forces of the coaster, the full power of such a big machine. These things are huge, and I want the rider to feel the power because it has to take up so much room to do so. And you'll see some cuts there. That's me riding the coaster to determine where I need to smooth. Now, heading into Coaster Hollow itself is a really fun area to kind of play around because the coaster sits way up in the air, and you can, in this section, and you can kind of cause it to do all of its crazy inversions and routines and things like that, all right above the guests' heads. You see the guests right below there. There's also 2 sets of railroad tracks, and there's multiple rides nearby. So I have to play with all of that in mind. And that's kind of the interesting part to this challenge. Now here I wanted a giant out-of-the-way turnaround. And you go back here towards Wild Thing, and you come to this turnaround. Now, this turnaround doesn't have to be super abrupt, but it kind of ends up being a little abrupt. And it's the second act of the ride. It's where the ride kind of regains its energy, begins a 3-foot or 3-degree decline overall, so it's going to constantly pick up speed and then head into a couple of sections that give you some gnarly forces. I wanted these forces to be kind of a punch as a final oh my gosh to the ride before it slams back into the station. Now here you'll see I kind of had to contend a lot with the railroad track, and I had to make sure the train could have clearance with the roller coaster in mind, and then I just auto-finished it because I feel like that little bit of a section, that auto-finish section, really was correct. And then obviously here, I'm just going to do an overall shading. So I back up because I wrote it again, and I'm just going to do a full shade. and this, or a full, not shade, but it'd be the art equivalent of a shade. I'm thinking of art, and I don't know. That's how I view coasters, as art. No, this is the final smoothing. You know, the adding the little details, the subtle little curves and edges and things, and making them nice and buttery smooth. And I didn't get the coaster perfect. And don't get me wrong, there are no custom supports on this bad boy. I do not do custom supports. I don't know why. I have such a huge problem with them. But, you know, eventually custom supports will be added to this. Just try not to let it bother you too much. So, without further ado, I'd like to show some cinematic shots of the ride and allow you to ride this coaster. Let me know in the comments what you think of it. I'd love to hear your thoughts.